This is Portland Paper. We're back for round number 2 here at Guardian Games in Portland, Oregon for our Monday Modern. Had to overcome a bit of technical difficulties, had some internet problems here, but I think we got everything sorted out, and from here on out we should be smooth sailing. And it looks like we got an interesting matchup here. We have the Vannifar pod deck, which I have yet to see in action, playing against Grixis Shadow. Any thoughts on this, Tim?
I'm a little bit excited because, again, as a former Kiki Chord player, we haven't seen a true creature toolbox deck in a long time, actually.
Yeah, it feels like the Abzan combo decks have fallen a little bit under the radar. This is doing a whole different thing here. Yeah, I'm interested to see how the combo works, if they're going to play a mid-range game, etc. Alder has probably a decent matchup against most anything that's not doing something incredibly degenerate. You have hand disruption plus removal like Fatal Push and Lightning Bolt. I think that's going to be the most important parts of their deck, and you're able to deploy a threat usually pretty quickly. So yeah, it should be an interesting matchup here.
Yeah. If we expect to see the Vannifar pod like the old Kiki Chord combo toolbox decks, I believe David has the advantage that he should be able to outgrind the Grixis Death Shadow deck. Typically, the toolbox decks have always had that slight advantage. So it'll be interesting to see which direction we'll see this match go. Because I know Alder, we definitely did see a couple failed pushes and not bolts, so he might be in trouble when David does get to those 5-drops. Because I know he runs several 5-drops in this deck.
All right, we got a new card that is chosen from David's hand. We got a Deputy from the newest set that it's like a detention sphere on a stick here. Turn number 2, David's deploying a fetch land, and this could be an interesting spot for an Eldritch evolution if that was something David drew.
Yeah, I think it's a telltale sign that Alder doesn't have a lot of good removal spells in hand if he took the Deputy of Detention out of his hand. If people don't know from the newest set of Ravnica Allegiance, Deputy of Detention is kind of like an old detention sphere on a body, as now we can see on screen. So those that don't remember Detention Sphere, when it enters the battlefield,
those that weren't traumatized by Return to Ravnica Theros standard. All right, looks like we have David deploying a Scavenging Ooze and just eating that Thoughtseize, probably trying to slow down Alder's playing a Delve threat here, which it seems like that could work. Alder's going to put 4 in the graveyard.
I think Alder's missing
5.
a second land.
Yep. Looks like it has that Angler in hand, so with a fetch land, would have been able to deploy that, but does not have that. But gets to know what's on top of David's deck with that Mishra Bottle.
Did he just draw?
Mishra's Bauble.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yep, triggered on David's upkeep.
Oh, he got 2 Mishras. Yeah.
Start by eating the scoos. Can I steal a die from you since I forgot mine? Pretend like the shadow ice.
All right, Scavenging Ooze is getting hungry, eating that Death Shadow, and just coming in for 1, 2, 3, 4 with an Exalted trigger. Seems like David's sort of playing the mid-range game now, trying to squeeze Alder on his graveyard as a resource, and has main deck Spellskite to protect the combo pieces, perhaps. Oh, got an Inquisition picked up for Alder there, so not what we were looking for.
I think he... Yeah, because he's now 1 short of deploying the Gurmag Angler, that is.
Yeah, it's a pretty heads-up play on David's side. Maybe not being quite as aggressive with the damage race going on here, but keeping Alder off of that Gurmag Angler. And I'm going to get a Thought Scour to hopefully hit a land drop.
Another Angler.
I'll pass the turn, gonna discard and get it. So Gurmag untap. Drawing for turn.
Well, it seems like we might get to see this pod deck do its thing. And David's just making this Ooze into quite the formidable threat. It's now as big as an Angler.
Yeah, well, and then with Exalted, it's even bigger. So Alder can't even have a good block anymore. And I think Alder still doesn't have a removal spell in hand. Was that a Death Shadow? No, that's Inquisition still, sorry.
Oh, well, there is that fetch land. It might be a little bit too late, though. Now, if we have something like Death Shadow here and fetch land, that could slow down David's attacks.
Still know the whole hand.
So David still has that Bounding Grixis, so even if Alder does play that creature,
There's one on
Is able to tap it down
Yes.
and attack through for lethal.
this one taps
so I think he has to play the Inquisition,
any creature.
get rid of the Bounding Grixis,
Only untap.
and then hopefully
Yep, left one.
keep a creature on board.
Yep. And one unknown in the hand. Great.
And if you don't have the Shadow, you're just basically playing that Angler to chump block.
Not ideal for me. I found a land. I'm gonna go to 2.
Alright, Alder's fetching down to 2 here.
Plus, I might need red mana at some point this game, so I don't really have a choice. Yeah. That was the bind I tried to put on you, so it seems to see if it works out long term, but it definitely was the good bind to put you in. Yeah, definitely. I mean, bind number 1.
It's interesting, David didn't really play many combo pieces here, just sort of is winning off the back of Exalted Scavenging Ooze here.
So I think
3, 4, 5, 6.
So I'm assuming Alder's going to play 2 threats this turn, so can survive from 1 getting tapped down.
Death Shadow is an 11/11. He is huge. I've been helping
well, here's the scary part. He's got a Teamer Battle Rage. I imagine David's gonna Bounding Grixis, tap down the Death Shadow, chomp, and then he can crack back for lethal next turn, actually.
Well, we have a Spellskite here,
Oh.
so that could eat the Battle Rage. If David, I'm sure, has played with Spellskite before and sees that kind of harkens back to the old
Yeah.
Splinter Twin days there. Thinking about how to navigate this turn here.
bird.
Bird is a word here.
So he
Oh.
decided not to play the Bounding Grixis.
Interesting.
Wow.
Huh. Curious why David didn't go for the attack there, because you'd at least get to eat the Angler.
They agreed. And then he could eventually eat that as well.
Maybe David was baiting the attack there, but I feel like that opens you up to a lot more outs, giving your opponent a lot more outs. Right. Right, David going down to 9, and instep a Scrib Ranger. That is an interesting one. Okay, Scrib Ranger, flash protection from blue, and you can return a forest to your hand to untap a creature.
No, it's the Exalted. Okay. So David did have a plan all along.
Pro blue, let's see. Flash, no?
Flying, yeah.
Flying. Oh, there we go.
Oh, it can untap a target creature, so it could untap Vannifar.
It's true.
Wow.
That is one way that you combo out, but it's interesting flavor on that one. I mean, it's a fairy. It seems very elf-like to me.
Yeah. Because in reality, we only see Ranger in mostly Legacy decks, I believe.
It's a very, very similar card. Yep.
I mean, I don't know. I can assume.
All right, so David just playing some mild shenanigans, nothing too serious in game number 1. And Alder mostly just getting stuck and pressured by that Scavenging Ooze. Sideboard-wise, what do you think Alder is going to be bringing to this matchup?
Well, I don't know if Alder knows what's all in David's deck. I know he definitely avoided the Engineering Explosive, which is a good call. Because David's creature cost is spread apart very equally. So Engineering Explosive is probably going to be really bad in this matchup because you can't even hit Vannifar. Actually, I don't even know if Alder knows he's on Vannifar. We didn't even see a Vannifar.
Yeah, I would say if you were heads up on reading your 5-0 list and things like that, and you see like a Bounding Grixis, you sort of assume that that's what your opponent's on, a combo there. And if I'm like, oh, my opponent's playing green creature combo deck, I'm probably going to be like, oh, they're on Chord or Evolution, so I'd want to board in. If I don't have all 4 Stubborn Denials in the main deck, I definitely want to board those in. And Might even be tempted to board in some other counter spells, depending on what they were. Disdainful Stroke is like iffy, but maybe.
Yeah. So there was one other Ren 5/0 deck though, that was the 4-color Sahili Rai Evolution combo deck as well that played Kiki Court also as well.
Correct.
So I'd say it's still 50-50 what Alder knows what's there, because a lot of the cards we've seen so far could be played in both, right?
True, we haven't seen any red though, and no creatures that have red pips in them. And I think if my opponent was playing like a Kiki Sahili, there would, I mean, you're very red heavy on the mana with casting Kiki there. So.
But David was stuck on 2 lands.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. No, as Donald Rumsfeld would say, known unknowns.
Yeah. But I can imagine David, if he's played a lot of toolbox decks, I can imagine him taking at least half of his mana dorks out.
Okay.
Because again, this turns into a very grindy matchup where mana dorks aren't going to do you any good.
So if we're base green in David's deck, what are there removal options that you bring in from the sideboard?
If he's not playing paths in the main board, I can imagine him bringing a couple paths from the sideboard out. That's probably the best, or a Fiery Justice, which actually a lot of people forget about, makes the other player gain 5 life while doing 5 damage. So it's a good way to clear out all the Death Shadows, actually, and Gurmag Anglers.
Kill an Angler and then Death Shadows that are
Gains 5,
less.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
A lot of people forget that card exists.
seems sweet.
Yep, it just happened like I got the natural scoos around a Thoughtseize and just was like, oh, keep your graveyard manageable long enough for me to do what I was doing.
Yeah, that was enough. Like that put me off the Gurmag for 1 turn, which was enough to then like have to jam it both.
All right, player shuffling up for game number 2 here.
Forced me to chump with the, because I would have had to chump the scoos.
Ooh.
And got a mulligan on David's side, which I feel like, especially with the relatively new mulligan rules, it's been around for a year and a half. When you're on the draw, it never feels that bad when you have to mulligan because you're at least at card parity. You get the scry, but man, when you're on the play and you mulligan and your opponent doesn't mulligan, you're almost down. I was basically being down 2 cards. It's pretty rough.
I don't know if Alder said he's keeping, but he's keeping a 1-lander. A single swamp, but does he have a Street Wraith?
Street Wraith, and I'd see at least 1
Thought Scour, I believe.
Fatal Push in there, maybe 2.
I believe there is 1 Inquisition also.
Okay. So a lot of interaction on 1, plus some chance for some redraws.
I know.
Well, there's Kiki.
Keep going.
Ooh.
Going down to 5.
Anything and then not worth keeping.
Curious how many lands this Vannifar pod deck is running.
I haven't seen myself. If it's anything like the old Kiki Core decks, it's probably running 22 to 23 plus 6 mana dorks, I believe.
Okay, are you playing Gavany Township in that?
No, the mana base is very heavy 4-color, I believe. Because the Vannifar does splash the white, I believe, for Night of Autumn. I think that's Shalai.
Okay, looks like David kept in some amount of bird effects. We got a Bird of Paradise there, and be back with you in just a second here. And we have a Thoughtseize for Alder on turn 1. And we see Eldritch Evolution, Spellskite, Path Exile, Bird of Paradise, and Stomping Grounds. What are you taking, Tim?
Well, he's got the Fatal Push deal with a bird. I'd take either the Spellskite or the Eldritch Evolution. Or the Path, possibly.
I'm taking the bird.
I don't know, he's got the Fatal Push. I'd leave the bird, right?
You leave the bird?
Because he's only got 1 land. You can deal with his best card and his bird next turn.
It's true, but I'm thinking if if Alder doesn't draw a land, it's I mean, I don't think tough call.
It is tough, and he did miss off the Street Wraith, so.
And a Lightning Bolt there, so he gets some interactive cards, but we're still in the same holding pattern that we were in game number 1. And well,
Alder's got the Dismembered to deal with that Spellskite, or does he Thoughtseize?
or my Revolution.
Interesting choice here.
I will take the Scavenging Ooze.
Okay, Alder's taking the ooze and playing around. David drawing a land.
There isn't really an optimal.
Anything at 4?
Send that message.
Well, it would be 3 drop, or
Oh, here we go. We got a land.
there we go.
Hey, evolution lets you jump.
Oh, +2.
jump
Yeah,
2.
it's +2.
Yep.
Sorry. So he could go to a Vannifar.
I'll Thought Scour myself. You got it. Unless you would like to change the target to spell scour.
Well, I can
And
try
Alder
to-
Thought Scouring, drawing
He
card,
just doesn't
I
and
love when I cast Thought Scour and just like
Nice.
get an angler.
off it. That
That
is
is
just
an intended effect.
really, really good.
So here's the fatal push left. Nice.
Fatal push. Yep. Your turn.
Untap. Drawing for guy.
Is Pod playing any Kitchen Finks?
I'm not sure the new version is playing it. That would be a really good target for Eldritch Evolution.
Yeah, there was one that I just briefly saw a top 32 list from GP Toronto that was on 4 Kitchen Finks.
Okay.
And it had a lot more value creatures in the deck. It still had the combo, but was pretty heavy on like Voice of Resurgence, Finks type creatures.
I believe David's more on the Teamer Splash White build.
Okay, David not interesting in evolutioning that Spellskite. And looks like it's gonna take a chunk of damage here. Going to 11, and Alder does have that Lightning Bolt in hand. Which is gonna do 2 damage at least with this Spellskite on the board, and we have Wooded Foothills and a fetch for David.
Same time if I just resolve to cast an Eldritch Evolution.
And an evolution on the Spellskite.
Yeah, but Alder's got both a Dismember and a Lightning Bolt. He's going to be able to deal with most creatures that David's going to put on the field.
Tempting. A little tempting.
Who wants to come?
Might be going for just a value creature here. I wonder if they sideboard in something like P and Kieran.
Okay.
but I
Oh,
just gotta...
get the Path to Exile.
Target this, return this.
Target the path.
And is there a Stubborn Denial?
And
I do not believe he does. I think that's Snap.
We got a Thought Scour, so maybe there's a chance to get a Thought Scour, Stubborn Denial. It would have to be a pretty lucky draw.
upkeep, I will go for the path here.
And an Upkeep Path. It's interesting, David's sort of card neutral. Spend a lot of mana and a lot of cards to get that Path to Exile.
I think, because otherwise, if you've gone for the Vannifar, she's kind of a dead card without any creatures.
Oh yeah,
right?
definitely. I do not think it was the wrong play to make, but it's definitely it's a somewhat of a value play, except that you spend that's a lot of mana spent to cast a Path to Exile.
Yep.
And Alder's hitting all the land drops now.
Mm-hmm.
And passing the turn.
Hierarch. 3.
And an attack for 3.
Target with the Death Shadows.
You are. It's very kind of you. I am gonna take 3, but it's because I'm gonna find a Blood Crypt and bolt your.
Alright, Alder going down to 9, and Eternal Witness eats a Lightning Bolt. Feels a little bit
Well,
like a win for David.
Yeah.
There you go. There's 9. I will pass to you.
Curious what the leftovers are. He's keeping that card hidden from us.
End of turn. I'll Thought Scour myself.
You've got it.
And end of turn Thought Scour for Alder. That's all of Alder's basics, probably. And picked up 2
Whoa.
fetch lands.
Alder could just go with the Snap beatdowns.
And not having that Stubborn Denial, it's interesting how you play around evolution here. Like, do you just kill the Noble Hierarch? Do you wait?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a part of casting the spell is sacrificing a creature. And get a bird.
Put you lower or not? That's the question against Death Shadow.
And David, considering attacking, are just holding back to not grow the potential future shadows. Seems like it's not going to matter that much with the Elder's ability to fetch and shock here.
Surprised how conservative Alder is with that Snapcaster. Ooh.
Does this one do? Search your library for a green creature. Okay, sweet.
Woodland Bellower? Is that what we got there?
Yes.
Going
yeah,
back
if I
to
were-
Origins here, I think that card recently gained a lot of financial value.
I believe it's mainly Commander, I believe still.
Right, bird coming in for 1.
I believe you search for, there we are, I have it on screen, a green creature with 3 CMC or less, put in the battlefield, or when it,
Non-legendary,
Yep.
so important clause there.
find another Eternal Witness and start, grinding it out.
Alder grabbing that Snapcaster, thinking about bolting the bird.
Resolve. Target bolt. Okay.
And bolts the bird. I wonder how many times that phrase has been uttered in the 26 years Magic has been
Yeah.
around.
So, as a Jeskai player, what's your most feared 3 CMC if you allow a bird to survive?
Oh, playing against a Geist is really hard to deal with, so probably that. And we have a double fetch for Alder. Did Alder just pay 2 life there? Nope.
I think of Faithless Looting.
Oh, looting. Okay, there we go. It's like, why are those 2 fetch lands going in the graveyard? And we have a Death Shadow deployed here.
Yeah. And you got a double. Okay, yeah, doesn't matter. I'm gonna go from 7. Stomping around tap. Yep. Tap. Turn.
The suspense builds. Oh, we just get
Oh.
it past the turn.
Still can't tell what's in David's hand.
Can you see the Street Wraith in Alder's hand? Got it.
And a Dismember, so
Okay.
he may dismember the Noble Hierarch. Or no, or just push.
Okay.
So if David doesn't have the path,
Okay, pass turn, and then on your upkeep we'll stop, and I'm gonna go for a path on
Yep, we do get a
Oh,
path
wow.
on upkeep.
and then I will
Decline to search.
and go
Draw stuff.
Dismember is an okay holdover because you're going to be able to cast that without spending life if you're on Alder's side of the table. If you don't want to pay any more life here.
I think that was a Lily of the Last Hope that
Yeah.
Alder has pulled.
It's a very strong card against any sort of Bird Noble Hierarch decks. And is minusing on Noble Hierarch.
Get that Death Shadow. Oh, okay. Not.
3 force land block. The only color basic land type I don't run.
Surprised he didn't go for the Death. Oh no, Death Shadow was passed. Sorry.
Yep. And cycled, pick up a
Stubborn Denial? Yeah.
Okay. Coming in for 2, David going down to 5. And passing on the turn. I kind of want to see some sweet big creature here. Anything? Anything? Got a Grove.
Oh well, we could slow down that Death Shadow.
I'm not sure. Oh, that's interesting. When your opponent's so low, it's kind of a long-term game plan there. I'm not sure I'm super into that. And a Bobble, fetch land, go to the graveyard, and the pickup from a Thought Scour is that Death Shadow.
Go to 3.
David dropping down to 3, and Death Shadow deployed. Looks like this board's pretty locked up for Alder.
Looks like the last card was a land in David's hand.
And imagine that David is playing, probably not playing very much interaction in the main deck. Like the past, I assume, are coming up from the sideboard.
Mm-hmm.
And did definitely save David from losing earlier in the game, but that is always a toss-up when you're playing a combo-oriented deck, is when you draw your interactive sideboard cards. That's one less piece of the combo that you have.
Yeah. Fortunately for David, going down to, you know, for a mold of 5, that wasn't too bad of a hand.
No, not at all. Like, lasted very late into the game there. Alder seemed to stumble on land for a couple turns, then was drawing lands, but no threats. That is some of the downside to this Grixis Shadow strategy, is you have very limited amount of threats. You're on 3 Snapcasters, usually sometimes 4. Got usually 4 Anglers, maybe a Tasigur in there, 4 Death Shadows, so it's kind of like Legacy Delver-esque, where maybe 16 threats are hanging out in there, and sometimes you draw a lot of air and cards that will cycle, but don't end up drawing your threats.
Man, I'm just so happy I drew that Faithless Looting. I literally drew like 3 lands in a row, and I'm just like, I'm losing this game. There's no way I can win this game with like 3 lands in my head, and then just like Faithless Looting.
Street Wraith is technically a threat that you can cast. And I feel like especially in the mirror, when it ends up being, there's mostly 1-for-1s in Death Shadow, especially nowadays where folks are off of Kolaghan's commands in the main deck, or if they are, maybe only playing one of them, that actually casting a Street Wraith with the Swamp Walk ability can be a way to steal a game in that mirror. Okay, I would like to see this namesake card.
Yeah, we haven't seen a single Vannifar yet, either game 1 or 2. Unless David kind of sideboarded a couple out because he knows it could potentially be a dead card.
It is a 4-mana 4/4, so it gets around 2/4? 4-mana 2/4, right? Correction. So it gets around push sometimes, definitely Lightning Bolt. If I'm on David's side of the table, I want to keep in a lot of creatures that don't die to Lightning Bolt, because you really want to tax your opponent's removal. But you're right that it is a little bit of an iffy play where you're having to sacrifice your other creatures. And turn 1 bird, bobble. I see a bolt hanging out in Alder's hand. Are we going to have the red mana to bolt the bird? A double bobble draw? I think I see a Tarn in there. Wants to know what everyone's next card is.
Am I happy or I'm sad?
It's definitely a magic card.
Okay.
You got there.
See a Scalding Tarn, a Swamp, a Lightning Bolt.
I can see him lightning. Okay.
Find Steam Vents and then bolt your bird.
Okay. You're at 17.
Steam Vents into bolting the Bird of Paradise.
So those will resolve.
Yeah, I can just get them when I finish shuffling, that's fine.
Could be afraid of that card on top of David's deck.
I forgot one. You're gonna play a land and another bird. More birds. And I'll just be passing to you.
All right.
On 3 in a row
Some
here.
basics on David's side of the table. Is this Vannifar pod deck playing something like a Magus of the Moon?
Just go to my turn.
Again, I haven't really
I don't
followed too much. It's
I'm
a
not
very
unsure
new
either.
deck.
It feels like that is a way of, especially when you have like Evolution or Chord, of really choosing opponents out
Yeah.
of a game. I'm seeing basics on David's side of the table, especially basic Island, which does lead me to believe there is going to be some kind of Blood Moon-esque effect in the deck. You also, modern decks are playing a lot more basics nowadays because of Field of Ruin is becoming a ubiquitous card.
Because it would hurt Alder quite a bit if we saw like a Mages of the Moon. Because that's a toolbox. I definitely love playing that when I play Kiki Chord. Actually, I think Alder's actually out, does not have any more removal spells in his hand.
All right, there is the zombie fish. I love that that's a creature type. A Tireless Tracker without a land drop there. Tireless Tracker, definitely one kind of card to grind out a game, except you usually want to pair that with Fetch Land. Because, you know, a turn 3 Tireless Tracker with a Fetch Land is quite the thing to face down.
So all are stuck with 2 lands, another Gurmag, and
Couldn't quite tell what the 4th card was there.
it was a red card.
Screw it. You don't play that anymore.
Perhaps a Battle Rage?
I ain't afraid.
Flame Tongue Kavu for the win.
It only hits creatures.
You're right. Oh. Missed sideboard and everything.
Why did I bring that in?
I don't recognize that Watered Grave. Is that the newer art?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting that they've reprinted them 2 times. Oh, so we get a Fatal Push off the Tireless Tracker, and gonna get a land, gonna get another 3-drop. Gonna get a... Ooh, that's rough.
Well, David's got the Bounding Grixis, so he could fog for
Okay.
a turn.
Back for 5.
Beginning of combat.
Oh, sorry.
You're gonna flash this and tap.
Tap my dude.
Alright, gonna do a little Deceiver Exarch impersonation there.
3/3.
Alder contemplating the Snapcaster Lightning Bolts. Definitely when you set up your mana like that, I feel like you're either really selling a bluff there or...
And I'll take a
Okay, passes the turn and allows a draw step to happen. So I think we get a Snapcaster, Teamer Battle Rage, a land,
Another Angler.
another Angler in Alder's hand, and an attack for 3.
okay, I'll go to 6.
I think if I was Alder, I would have bolted the bird again. You still have Snap. Or no, that is Teamer Battle Rage.
Okay.
Go for Snapcaster Mage. Target push and push your bird.
Okay, flow to blue.
You got it. My turn?
Yeah, well that leaves Path to Exile. It's not going to be able to be represented here, so the Battle Rage. We got 10, 11, 12.
I'll bobble you.
So land, Angler, Battle Rage. And see, with the land, you cast Battle Rage, then you'd have... It's not a fetch land, I don't think, is that?
Don't believe so.
So I don't think you'd be able to deploy both Angler and Battle Rage in one turn unless it was a fetch land.
I say play conservative, you just attack and just play the new Angler.
I'll attack you for 5.
Go to 10.
Play this.
I go to 5.
Okay. I also can see it because it's a shock. So it's the Gate Crash Water Grave. He could play it conservatively because he is also at 6 life.
It's true, if David draws...
Timed it the way you did. Oh, you got a bobble trigger.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
David reminding Alder of the Bobble Trigger.
Spell Slide on top.
So David does have a Vannifar in hand, but we're still missing
I'm
that 3rd
curious
land
if
now.
David's going to attack. Yeah, get your opponent down to 3.
Fairy Town. I'll block.
Okay. Pass turn.
Ooh. I think David's a little bit in trouble because he's going to have to chump here.
Come in for 5.
I will declare blocker.
You got it.
It's interesting. Seems like David could be able to, if you're just drawing some land and have another Grixis in hand, have some shenanigans.
Mm-hmm.
Pay 4 and delve 3 for Russian Fish.
Tombstalker.
All right, have another Gurmag Angler.
I will untap. I will draw for turn.
And do we get a land? Do we get Chump Blocker? Okay, David goes to 3, perhaps
Bounding Grixis.
Bounding Grixis to tap 1 down.
Double block.
Interesting thing is with the double block, then you'd turn on Fatal Push.
Okay, yeah.
All right.
Fish in my hand.
Nice.
I was just like,
Okay, looks like
I think
Alder is just
fish in a row.
attacking in. David concedes, and that is the game.
Them, which it was a weird game because again I had like
All right, we got about 8 minutes left. We're gonna step out there, scout the room, see if anyone is going into game 3. If they are, we'll put them up. But if not, we'll be back in about 8 minutes for our round number 3 here at Guardian Games in Portland, Oregon.